today with Florent Bonnefoy, founder of Bonnefoy Partners. Since last year, you started the company last year in 2017. You told me May 2017, and you have been in the food business for like 10 years, or even maybe more, and many in China, or only in China. You're going to tell us exactly. You have been working for the prestigious guide Michelin. You have launched it. You have worked on it. You have launched it, and now you have created your own company. Advising entrepreneurs, advising companies on how to start, develop, manage their food business, food-related business. And that's an interesting thing because you don't say only food business, but food-related business on your presentation in China. I understood Greater China because I feel you're also involved in Hong Kong. I would say even Asia because I read that you have been operating in Singapore as well. You have done in Singapore. So it's very, very interesting to have you on the show. I feel there are so many people interested in food, so many people interested in cafe and restaurants, in all these food-related businesses and health food as well, fine dining. This is such a topic in China that I think it will raise a lot of interest among our audience. So thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Matthieu. It's a pleasure to be with you today and to be able to share with your audience a few ideas or insights or experience related to food.
First question, how do you get a Michelin star?
Well, so as you mentioned, I worked for the Michelin Guide for 10 years, mainly in China. And I launched the first edition of the Shanghai Guide. So I did many things when I was at Michelin, but my key responsibilities was to establish a strategy and the roadmap for Michelin's business growth and brand growth in Greater China. So when it comes to stars, I know that a lot of people have this question and say why this restaurant has 1 star or 2 star or this one has 3 stars. Actually, there are 5 criteria, and everybody can find those criteria. It's public knowledge. Basically, of course, the quality of the produce is very important. Then the technique. So it's about the chef, how he's mastering a technique. And then you have also a question of creativity. So how the chef is inputting his personality into the food. So if you take a very, let's say, a simple staple in China, a dim sum, for example, a shrimp dumpling. So if you have very good shrimps, then the technique is very good. So your shrimp dumpling, the technique is good. It's not too moist. The texture is nice. Then how a chef would make a difference by adding a little something to that dumpling that would make it different from other very good shrimp dumplings. Then you have a 4th criteria, which is actually an economic criteria. So is value for money. So this is a very important criteria. And a last criteria, which is very important, is actually consistency. So it means consistency over time, but also consistency over the menu. So you cannot have, and we have a lot in Asia actually, restaurants which are very famous for one item. And because this dish, they do it perfectly. But then the rest of the menu is just okay. And actually for the Michelin Guide, you cannot have this kind of occurrences. You need to have consistency over the menu. So it means that across the menu, no matter which dish an inspector, so the famous guys who are going to the restaurants to test them, no matter which dish they will choose, actually that dish would be good. So it's really important. So if I repeat, it's quality of ingredients, technique, so actually expertise of the chef. Then you have creativity, so innovation a little bit, or personality of the chef, I would say. Then consistency, and value for money.
What's the business model of Michelin Guide? Is it the business model? How does it make money? Through selling the guides only, or there are other revenue streams?
So the business model has been shifting actually. So it went from a traditional publishing business model. So as you mentioned, selling the guide was the main source of revenue for the guide, to something that is much more based on sponsorship and events.
So the event you mentioned in your presentation sent to me, Food Forward 2017, is actually very much in line with what I just said. It's an event. You mentioned like 30 million views, 800,000 engagements. Could you tell us more about it?
Well, so Food Forward, who happened, was held last year in June, end of June, beginning of July, was actually, so it's an event that was created by Michelin and by IDEO. IDEO is a business consultancy, an American business consultancy. So it was co-created together. Actually, the goal of that day was really to try to tackle a few issues that we've seen as very important about the F&B industry in China. So many the issues we identified were first the status of the chefs. So as you can imagine, in China, actually being a chef is not something that is quite glorious. And until now, I mean, in a family, in a traditional Chinese family, if you go, and you can ask many Chinese chefs, younger ones actually, if you go and tell your parents, oh, I want to become a chef, usually they would try to, maybe to ask you not to do that, maybe try to be a lawyer or a doctor. And it's not like in Europe or in the US where now chefs are, I mean, being a chef is kind of really cool and popular. So we identified that problem and we were like, okay, there is a topic here that seems to be very important, and we wanted to have people talk about it. The other one was also, another topic was about fine dining in China and also trends in Chinese cuisines. Chinese cuisine is diverse. Actually, you cannot say Chinese cuisines, and it's very diverse. And when people tell me, "Oh, I don't like Chinese cuisine," and I'm like, "Okay, but I mean, you can always find one cuisine in China that would be suitable to your taste." I mean, there are so many different types of cuisines and tastes, and so. The event was also trying to see, okay, why is Chinese cuisine maybe not that popular in the US or in Europe, or was not that popular in the US and Europe? So we invited also foreign, so we had different chefs coming in, people from the industry, historians, researchers, and so that event was really about trying to tackle those topics. So Food Forward, so it was a one-day conference, basically. As you mentioned, what was important for us is, okay, we don't want it to be only an offline event. And we also want it to be an online event because otherwise the impact had to be more important. So we basically, so we had sponsors for sure. We, of course, used, so the Michelin Guide, of course, has been always had a presence, a digital presence for a long time until now. I mean, we grew it over time. It took us like about 4 years. Yeah, with really organic growth. The thing is, you can imagine that the Michelin Guide coming to China was already a big event in 2016. So at that time, all our digital accounts, so be it WeChat or Weibo, of course, we had like a lot of fans, and we didn't need. I mean, we needn't go to use, to purchase fans or to go through KOLs. Actually, it was really organic growth. So
how many?
I can't remember now. It's 100,000 or 100.
Purely organic.
Yeah, purely organic.
Okay.
And now I'm sure it's more now. I don't have it. And actually, so we, of course, for Food Forward, we used those accounts, but also we partnered with different platforms which are doing live streaming. And so that, of course, helped us. So you could follow the conference, of course, live, and that brought a lot of audience. So that's why you can see the results that you.
So number of views, yeah, I repeat. So you get like 30 million views and 800,000 engagement. I guess engagement is a tweet. Is people reacting to what you say?
Yes.
Is that engagement? You mentioned the diversity of Chinese cuisine. We usually talk about 8 cuisines in China. Do you feel actually it's purely intellectual to talk about 8 cuisines? I feel you would say that there are much more than this. What's your takeaway on this?
Well, actually, you have in China, if you talk to Chinese chefs and if you talk to a few people who are doing research, food research, they tend to say that now those 8 cuisines is much more, it's an expression. Actually, if you look at it, it's been changing over time. So maybe 50 years ago, those 8 cuisines were a little bit different. You have a large variety of cuisines. Of course, you have big, basically, Jiangsu, the provinces around Shanghai, so what we call Jiangnan region. Those cuisines, they have a lot of elements in common. And just one of them is actually considered as one of the 8 great cuisines. So it is very diverse. I would say there are more than just 8 types of cuisines in China. For example, if you go to more remote places in China, for example, Xinjiang, where actually you have you have Uyghur cuisine. It's very different from what you can find in the south of China. Then Hunan cuisine, the spices of Hunan cuisines are also very different from the spices of Sichuanese cuisine. So it's and some of them are not considered as one of the 8 great cuisines of China. So yeah, this is very
much more. So I know that part of the we are, as you know, Dasher Consulting within research, and we see some clients doing a lot of sensory research. We help actually we support them in tasting the product to test. Do you feel that the different cuisines in China, you talk about the Hunan, which is spicy, you talk about Uyghur, which is more Muslim, so they may actually like more sugar. But actually we found out in some research. Do you feel that people favor different kind of cuisines among China, and there would some population would favor sugar, some population would favor more spicy food, and then when you have a concept from the West, you may consider more Mexican food, for instance, in the places where people like spicy food, or a place where you have more sugar, pastries, where in places where people like sugar. What's your conclusion on this, on the difference of taste?
This is a very interesting question and a very important one. Okay. It's a common place to say it. China is very big, so it's a very big market, and people are very different from a market to another one. So if you take Shanghai, if you take the major cities in China, people in Shanghai, people in Guangzhou, people in Beijing, in Chengdu, or in Hong Kong, they are all different, and their taste is all different. And yes, in some regions, and there is something very interesting that happened. Okay, I've been living in China for 10, 12 years now, but all my experience in China, actually I've lived in China for longer. So the first time I came to China was in 1999. And then I studied in Beijing in 2002. So At that time, actually, Chinese consumers, they were traveling less. Okay, so for example, when you were in Beijing, the kind of food you could find in Beijing was basically Dongbei Cai, so Dongbei food, so from northeastern province, and Beijing food, a little bit of Cantonese, but not well executed, and that's it, and maybe Sichuanese. And in Shanghai, it was much more like Shanghainese food, cuisine, and cuisines from the nearby provinces. And in Guangzhou, in Canton, people were mainly eating Cantonese food. And for example, they couldn't have spicy food. It turns out that 10 years later, or let's say now, when I go to Guangzhou or to Canton to see my friends, I see they always, now there is a trend for spicy food. So we used to say, oh, Cantonese people can't eat spicy food, and now they are all about spicy food. In Shanghai now, you have a population of people who are traveling a lot and are very curious. So you have a lot of diversity in terms of restaurants, actually, because you can cater to those people. So, for example, you were saying, okay, about a Mexican restaurant wanting to open in China. Do you want that Mexican restaurant to go to a place where people love spicy food? I'm not sure. You have to go to a place where you know that people would accept and be interested into a foreign cuisine, because they would have this.
I see.
It's not because it's spicy that you would necessarily need to go to a region that eats spicy food, but it's just much more like, okay, this is a type of cuisine that would be maybe more well perceived in a place where they already know about foreign cuisines. And so it's all about, you have to know your market basically and understand really what the people are eating, what are their habits. It's a very, very interesting question.
So we just talked about creating a new concept. Should we stick to the existing taste of the population, or make them discover new tastes? You said that basically the discovery process is very strong in the food industry. People may be interested in overseas or foreign businesses, new concepts. So even in a place where they don't eat spices, they may actually be interested in eating spicy, like Guangzhou. Talking about food business and how to start a food business, how to develop a food business, what would you be for you the key success factors and the key failure factors you have to watch very carefully?
Well, of course, first of all, the food has to be good. I mean, you cannot come here and try with something, just okay. I mean, that's very simple to say, but the food concept must be very, very strong. So it means you need to have a different concept, something that is unique. Also, there is a kind of, I would say in China, fun is also very important. So
how do you make fun?
Fun is being playful. I would say playful. So you have a few examples of people who really understand the market here. One is Paul Perret, so it's in fine dining. So Paul Perret is a French local chef, I would say. He's really, of course, he was trained in France and he has an extensive experience in Asia. But his project really started in Shanghai. And I think he's one of the chefs here, the foreign chefs, who really understand the Chinese market. All his concepts, be it Mr. and Mrs. Bond, or Ultraviolet, or Chop Chop Club, which is now closed, but they all have something that is really unique and also playful. And it's working very well here. And that's what makes them very, very successful.
Could you be more specific on some key examples of why you would call a place playful?
Well, for example, if you take Chop Chop Club, I think one thing that was working very well with the Chinese audience is the fact that so for Chop Chop Club, which was a barbecue place, you had large screens that were announcing when the piece of meat was ready. So basically, they were grilling and roasting a big piece of meat or bigger piece of fish, and so in order to order, you had to. It was a little bit like a market or a marketplace, I would say. So you had to actually look at the screen. Then you would order according to the time, but maybe you would not get the food. I mean, it was very playful, and people really enjoyed that. The stress of, am I going to get that piece? Am I going to get that dish or not? Oh, we need to look. It worked.
It's a topic of conversation among the table.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, sorry.
Playful is also so something. If you look at Mr. and Mrs. Bond, all the atmosphere, the general environment of the restaurant, but also the menu was. He designed a very extensive menu, which is not something you usually do for a French restaurant, but which is something that you do in China. If you look at Chinese menus in Chinese restaurants, they are extensive. It's like you have a large range of choice. And actually, it made it on purpose, purposely, in order to make people comfortable and say, oh yeah, we can choose a lot of things. You know, it was very clever. And it's not, Mr. and Mrs. Bond started 10 years ago, and it's still here in a very competitive place, which is the Bond in Shanghai, and it's doing very well.
So we said good food, to be unique, to be playful.
Location is very important. This is, I mean, the first, once you have your concept, and actually location can influence the concept, and vice versa. So those are the two things that would make your restaurant successful. That are really key factors. If you have a good concept but not in the right location, then you probably the business won't be good. If you have a good location but a concept that is weak, same, you're not going to make it. So it's really very, very important. Those two factors are very important. Then a last critical factor, which actually is also sometimes overlooked, is some people will think, okay, we have very good food. Our concept is quite strong, but they overlook marketing. And actually, you need to sustain awareness in the midst of a lot of noise. It's maybe harder in China because people are constantly solicited, you know. And the span of attention, the attention span is actually quite short. So marketing is still very important. And I would say also by marketing also traditional public relations. So working with magazines, working with journalists, food critics is also quite important. On top of course, what the phenomenon of KOLs, which is also important, but I would say traditional PR is also very important for restaurants now, in order to still be on top of the news, to always bring something new, and that people keep thinking about you.
You were talking about playful. You gave an example. I feel now food is very connected with the phone. People take so many pictures of the food. Have you found some concept which could make it more playful, or some marketing tools that is both making it playful for the experience itself, and also for the marketing? Would you have some examples of someone who has been able to leverage the fact that people are automatically by themselves, without any instruction, taking pictures of anything they eat as soon as it looks good?
Well, what you're mentioning here is a global trend. So food has to be Instagrammable. Instagrammable. So meaning that basically you cannot have plating has become very important. So you cannot have dishes that are good and maybe they don't look that good, but you know that's important now to have something that would be very good, looking very good. And so you have a few. I think now you cannot neglect that aspect. These are and I know that chefs, for example, there is a trend in France now for some chefs who now refuse that people, or they kind of forbid people to take pictures of their food.
That cannot happen in China.
Sorry?
Right? That could not happen in China, right?
I think currently no, but who knows? I mean, you know, you can have a very strong chef, and it's always a question of personality of someone who says, okay, now I don't want people to take pictures of my food, and maybe that would be actually a good PR campaign. Maybe that would attract attention for sure. And it's true that in China, the first thing that people do is take out their phone and take pictures of the food. I do that all the time because by trade I have to, but I was doing that way before. It is very important. But okay, being the food looking good is still not the most important factor. It is important. You cannot overlook it. I can remember one article I saw. I think it was in maybe it was in Time Out, and and the journalist was leaving, so she made a compilation of all the worst looking food she saw, and actually, yes, some of the pictures were really. I mean, you could see like a bird. I mean, it was kind of really. So these kind of things you need to pay attention because it can be very
negative,
harmful for your business.
I see. You were mentioning to this very successful chef, starting Mr. and Miss Bonnefoy. Everyone who has been in Shanghai, even actually for a short time, should know it. And so indeed, it's very successful, it's famous. But at the same time, you said that he created a concept that he closed. So you see some very successful people in food who are still launching restaurants and still closing them. And that's something I see so much, is that a lot of concepts are opened and closed. Why is it so? Why is restaurant such a difficult business compared to, I feel, other businesses where they could stay in business for 10, 15 years? A restaurant which has been in business for 10 years, it's pretty rare. I mean, especially in China. What's your analysis on this in terms of cost structure? Is it the rent? Is it the people? Is it the fact that the population and tastes are changing? What's your analysis on it?
Well, there are many different factors that can lead your business to close, and you can have a good concept. You can have good. I mean, all the factors I just mentioned that will make you successful. If your landlord decides to raise the rent, or they are not, your investor is not paying anymore the landlord. You have different factors that could lead to actually your business to close. For sure, it's a very difficult environment. It's a very difficult business. Having good food is not now. It's not all. Actually, it's not everything. It will not do. I mean, you can't think that okay, just having good food will do the job. You need strong marketing and communications, for sure. That's very important. And also, before and in the case of people who are trying to import brands, famous brands in China, famous restaurants, it's actually people are sometimes rushing, and they expect, because the brand is famous Europe or in the US, they would expect, oh, okay, we will be famous in China as well. Actually, they often rush. They have investors coming to them and maybe throwing a lot of money to them, and then they don't really do the due diligence. That is a very important thing to do before you launch any type of concept in China, because you cannot just say, okay, I'm famous, let's say in the UK or in France, then I will be famous in China.
Would you have some examples of companies which retreated? I remember, I don't know if you think that was the case of Paul, for instance, who entered China as a bakery and then retreated, for instance.
Well, I can't name names, but I would say you have a few very striking examples of people in food business that have, for example, yeah, I won't name names. I cannot do that. But I have an example of one very famous French brand that launched in Beijing with a lot of noise, a lot of PR, 6 or 7 years ago. So they do, it's food related. They launch in a mall in Beijing, next to the CBD. And so the market was not there yet. So they were selling a lot of refined food. European refined food, and the market was not there yet, and they had to withdraw within less than 1 year. And it happens, it happens. But now they want to come back to the Chinese market, and actually it's very difficult because all the investors, they remember that. They remember that 7 years ago they tried to enter in Beijing and that they failed. And now actually there could be a market for them in China, really, because people's habit has changed and the demand for refined food, caviar type, foie gras, has of course grown exponentially. So, but it's difficult for them to now find investors, because investors in China, they would remember that kind of that kind of adventures they had in Beijing.
Interesting. When you say, so you said good food, does it mean good ingredients? Does it mean it should be imported?
For sure, it means good ingredients, yeah.
Does it mean it should be imported? That's actually my question. Do you feel that a good food in China, in China, is necessarily imported food, imported ingredients?
No. You have well, it depends on the type of food you're doing. For sure, for Chinese cuisines, you have a lot of good ingredients in China, and now you have you have people producing ingredients that are really going for quality, and of course. Agriculture in China and food industry has a lot of crisis, but I think also because by people's demand, so people want healthier food, trustable ingredients. Actually, now in the past years, there has been a lot of efforts in order to actually produce more qualitative and better ingredients. So you have now entrepreneurs and people really wanting to do that. So it doesn't. So yeah, no, good ingredients doesn't necessarily mean imported ingredients. You have here also, and actually a lot of foreigner chefs. They work with local ingredients. And some of the local ingredients are very good.
How do you make sure? How do they make sure? How do they make sure the ingredient is good? It's not, there's concern about pollution, there's concern about healthy food on meat as well. It could be anything which is grown or also from the meat. There's a concern when it's coming from China, and a lot of concerns of consumers are that they go to a fine dining place, and they are not sure if the price they pay is really corresponding to very, very good ingredients, because there's always this concern and skepticism about what do you have in your plate in China? Is it if it's local? How do you react to this? So you seem less skeptical than the average consumer.
No, what I would say is, of course, you cannot be sure 100%, but the same as you would be in Europe, you cannot be sure 100% of what you're eating, actually. All the organic trend in China is taking off really quickly. And there are, I mean, the Chinese government is also putting a lot of efforts on that. Now, for sure, you cannot be sure 100%, but I would say it's the same in a lot of places.
Interesting. Okay. And when you start a restaurant, would you have some best practices in order to select your ingredients? Should it be should you have special channels? Should you have special tips to make sure when it's imported, it's a way of ensuring you have the same standard?
Yeah, the problem with imported food, so of course a lot of, so if we're talking about foreign cuisine, that would need imported food. Some ingredients you cannot find in China because they cannot be imported in China. So
for instance?
For example, beef from Japan is not authorized in China. I mean, you have quite a few ingredients that are not available in China. So you need to find ways to replace those ingredients. So, okay, if you cannot work with Japanese beef, then you work with Australian beef. For example, you cannot, some of the truffles are not authorized in China, so they have to replace by other kinds of truffles. This type of ingredients. Chefs usually, when you start a food business, you need good ingredients. You would usually, the best thing to do is to go around, especially on a market like China. If you're a foreigner, the best thing to do is to go around, meet chefs, meet other restaurant owners, and ask them, okay. And you would tell me, oh, why would they give you their, and some of them they won't. But usually you would find a lot of, I would say, solidarity within the community, because everybody knows that F&B business is a hard one, especially if you're a foreigner wanting to do a F&B business in China. And there's a kind of, okay, yeah, I'm going to help you. So I know a lot of chefs, actually, and very famous ones, who actually came here in China and they asked other chefs, and they found some really, good willing chefs and people who help them. So it's I would say, yes, start first to meet people and see how you can get help on that. It's
so you're helping
community.
Yeah, you're helping companies, entrepreneurs to start, develop, manage their food-related business. So it's not necessarily restaurants. For those who would be interested in interacting with you, what kind of services? What do you work on? Do you work more on basically the sourcing, for instance, ingredients, on the marketing, on the PR, on the concept, generally speaking?
Yeah.
How do you work with client?
We work on three elements. One is concept. So we help existing restaurants to refine their concept. So it goes from consumer experience, quality of the food, quality of the cooking, and also, I would say like general consumer experience. Then we also develop concepts. So we help, so I work in hospitality industry with hoteliers and property developers. And so we help them to find the right concept for their for their properties. So this is one thing. Second one, we work on marketing. So once you have a good concept, you need to have good marketing. So we work on that. And yeah, so that
we talk about property development. You talk about malls and department stores, right? You don't talk about
resorts.
Live, right?
It can be, so yeah, it can be malls, it can be resorts as well, and
Okay.
And you know, so hotels basically. Okay. So when a property developer brings in a hotel brand, we will also help them to find the right food concept for their hotel.
Okay. What do you feel is the minimum investment to start a restaurant in China? What is minimum investment you feel?
And this is a very okay. That question, it all depends on the location, the city you want to develop.
Oh, you feel it's location.
Location
difference. Okay.
The type of restaurants you want to develop. Is it more like local? Is it like it has a lot of different factors. So there is no minimum or maximum. Really depends on.
In terms of location, what prices do you see? In China, we talk about per day per square meter. So there are some ranges for offices. I guess there are some ranges for restaurants as well. Some would be expensive, like 30 RMB per day per square meter may be expensive, and 10 RMB per day per square meter may be cheap. What's the range do you have in mind?
It's also very varied. I mean, if you go to a place like Guangzhou is actually less expensive than Shanghai. Shanghai has the craziest prices for renting. Or if you go to Hong Kong, in a simple, I mean, okay, if you are in Hong Kong in Central, for very very small spaces, like less than 60 square meter to 70, you already have like rents going sometimes over 100,000 Hong Kong dollar per month, which is already 10,000 euros. So you need to sell a lot of menus when you have this kind of prices. Hong Kong is a very difficult market to that extent, which makes it very difficult. Even though it's a very sophisticated market, so you have a lot of diverse food and you can have a lot of different types of concepts. It's now in China one of the most diverse dining scene, but it's a very difficult one.
I can remember. Are you based in Beijing or Shanghai?
Shanghai.
So about Shanghai, what would be the range you would feel expensive and the range you would feel actually a very good deal? I mean, I understand that depends on location. If you're in Xintiandi, if you're on the Bund, it's different. But for, let's say, the Bund, what do we talk about in terms of pricing, and what do we talk about when we talk about other places? If you have some ranges, or at the same ideas with Shanghai compared to Changsha, compared to other cities in China, to give a sense to the audience of how expensive rent can be in China.
Well, for the same type of basically, restaurants are bigger in China mainland than in Hong Kong. If you go to like 100 square meter, then you would have places where it's about 30,000 to 50,000 RMB, something like this, which seems to be acceptable on that market. Yeah.
Okay. And when you rent a place, do you need to put a deposit? Do you have some constraints on? Do you need to get a commitment for 1 year, 2 years? How does it work in the food?
You need to pay deposit. You need to pay deposit. Yeah.
Deposit. Okay. I see. Good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I hope it was interesting enough.
very instructive. I guess the audience and anyone interested in food business would have directions where to investigate, where to be good at. being playful is very interesting topic I've not thought of. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sure. It was really. Thank you,
Thank
Matthieu.
you for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.